Hello and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, hi, I'm Emily Steeman, your organized mess expert. I'm a professional organizer ready to help you find the calm in the chaos. This is part 3 of a series that I'm doing about how to overcome your emotions when decluttering. And today we're going to be talking about the last 3 emotions that come up when decluttering. Now, obviously, I'm only picking out 7 emotions. The first 4 was last week, and these next 3, there are plenty of other emotions that you might be feeling when decluttering. I'm just picking out the top 7, all right? So just know that you are not alone if you're feeling any of these emotions or others. So let's get started. So last week we talked about the first 4 emotions. Remember, it was guilt, love and fondness, sadness and grief, and overwhelm. I think I got some of them a little bit mixed up in order, but it doesn't matter, right? This week we're going to be talking about frustration, anxiety, and fantasy. For each emotion, I'm going to be sharing what it sounds like or what you might be feeling, and then just some things to keep in mind and some things to combat those thoughts. The first emotion is frustration. This sounds like, why doesn't my spouse help or care? Spouse, roommate, whoever you may be living with, siblings, right? So why don't they care? I'm trying to be organized, but they just seem to not even care. Second one is, why am I like this? Just so frustrated with maybe your desire to hang on to things, your desire to buy things even though you have like 10 of them at home, all right? You might be feeling, as you're decluttering, these emotions of frustration and why am I like this? And another thought that might pop into your mind is, why do I waste so much money? As you're decluttering, you are bound to come across something that you don't need anymore or you've never used before. They might be brand new and you spent a decent amount of money on it. Why do I spend so much money? What do we do when we encounter these emotions? How do we work through them? All right, so the first one is, why doesn't my spouse help or care? Well, the first thing to remember is your spouse or your roommate, your sibling, whoever you're living with, is on their own journey as well. Because organizing is a journey, all right? It's a learned behavior. And you have to allow them to go on their own journey. They won't necessarily be ready to part with things as quickly as you wish that they would be ready to part with things. And so give them grace and give them a listening ear to hear their stories, like we talked about last time with the emotion of sadness and grief. Sometimes it just, or love and fondness, sometimes it just helps to be able to pass something on if you have someone there to share in that memory, to remember with, all right? Even if you weren't in their lives at this time, you still can hear their stories, hear them out, and take note of them. So, and then perhaps they'll be ready to move on from that thing, or maybe they need some more time to think about it and mull it over. But, so give them grace, either way. Next to thoughts or things that you might say to yourself while decluttering with frustration is, why am I like this and why do I spend so much money? So remember these feelings as you're going shopping. Maybe jot it down in a notebook or on your phone, like a little notes tab, just so that, sometimes scientifically proven, I think, I'm told, that if you write something down, you retain it more, right? So at least that's what works for me. Write it down and remember these feelings. Remember maybe what you don't like about this item or why it didn't work or whatever. So the next emotion is anxiety. And what does this sound like? What does anxiety sound like? Anxiety sounds like, but I will use it someday. But what if I give it away and I'll need it later? What if fill in the blank? Chances are, if you dive into these feelings, they are anxiety, but chances are if you dive into them deeper, they'll all stem from personal experiences. So maybe you don't want to get rid of anything because maybe you didn't have a lot as a kid or as a young adult, and you really want to hang on to the stuff just in case you may need it. So we don't really need to get to the bottom of this topic while decluttering, but it is good to note these feelings as anxiety and not necessarily the truth. All right? Because this little tiny paper clip, I don't have a paper clip, but like if you just have a bajillion paper clips, you could probably let a couple of them go. You could buy a pack of 100 paper clips from the Dollar Tree for $1.25. Okay, so think about what is it that I could spend to get this back. So in other words, like if I'm going to get rid of something, can I replace it if I end up actually needing it? Can I replace it in a couple of days so I can get it at my local Walmart, my local stores, or on Amazon all within a couple days? And can I get it under 20 bucks? Or maybe for you it's 10 bucks or whatever you decide that threshold. Everything lower than that, just get out of your house. You don't need that extra clutter, especially if you don't actively use it now. So with anxiety, remember to think on truth. This feeling of I will use it someday, and what if I need it in the future? Which are all good things. You might use it, and you might need it. All right? But is this necessarily truth? Do you need this item to survive? Is it going to be in your survival pack, the 20 items that you need to bring to in your survival pack if, I don't know, zombies come and raid us? All right, so I'm not into zombie movies or alien movies. Can you tell? So, like, do you actually use it and need it? All right, I digress. The seventh emotion is fantasy. Fantasy sounds like, oh, I always wanted to do this. I just can't give it away. I spent so much money on it. I'm going to do this hobby. All right. So this is like anything that you have like boxes of or even a small little bit of that you're like, I'm going to do this. Someday I'm going to do this. I'm not sure when, Black Friday 3 years ago, I decided that I was going to take up knitting, and I bought a bunch of stuff because it was on sale. Have I touched it? No, I made, you might be thinking, well, I actually did make a scarf that was lopsided and I kept on going in and out, and not a pretty fashion, right? So, and now you have a couple of kids and you just don't have time for it. All right, so think about these hobbies as you're coming across them and you're decluttering. Think to yourself, do I actually want to do this? And if you do, fantastic. Write it on your calendar that you're going to do it in the next 2 weeks. You're going to just start. You're going to explore this art or craft or whatever hobby is going to be. But if the answer is you're actually not going to use it and you are not going to take the time to put it on your calendar in the next 2-3 weeks, then it is time to pass it on. And maybe you could try selling it or on Facebook Marketplace, on Craigslist, or you can try finding someone that you know that is in the phase of their life that they would love to use this craft. Maybe you know someone who would love to try scrapbooking or would love to do this project or whatever. Find someone in your area, someone you know who can use that now, and you can part ways with it and know that it's going to be used and it's not going to take up any more of your valuable space. With the emotion of fantasy, you need to remind yourself, you need to ask yourself, is it worth keeping for a maybe someday use? So is it worth keeping a huge bin of stuff that you're not using right now? If you're in a small apartment, maybe the answer is no, and you need to let things go. But if you do have the space for it, you can consider keeping it. However, if if you do that with everything, then you're not going to have space for the stuff that you actually want to use. And I'll talk about this in another video, but there is something about the value of open and empty space. It just, it lets you breathe, and it's amazing. So, don't underestimate the value of open space. You're like, well, I don't need to use a space for another, off-season clothes or whatever. I can keep this hobby. Well, maybe if you don't have any use for it and you can't see yourself doing it in the next 6 months, consider passing it along, because it's not worth it to keep stuff in your home, because every time you look at it, that's going to be another to-do. Every time you go past it, which may not be very often, but every time you do pass it, you'll be reminded, oh yeah, I need to do that. So you don't need that. Get rid of that, all right? So this concludes the 7 emotions that we talked about. The 7 emotions, again, are guilt and grief, love and overwhelm, frustration, anxiety, and fantasy. And next week we're going to talk about what to do with these emotions. So be sure to come back next week for that topic. All right, friends. See you in the next video. Bye!